but no question, Brian Kelly, after a kind of a rough start, has the Tigers playing really good football. They dominated Ole Miss. Mike Scarborough, Tiger Bait, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. What's changed, Mike? What's changed with LSU?
Man, it's hard to put a finger on it. There's still a lot of aspects of this football team that, when you're used to seeing some strong LSU football over the years, you realize you're kind of doing it by hook or crook and duct paper clips. But I think he's getting the most out of this team that he can. I think what Matt House is doing defensively has been phenomenal. The changes they made at halftime, not only with the defenses they were calling, but also some personnel changes. And then when you combine that with the way Jaden Daniels has been playing the last several weeks. And Brian Kelly even says that, look, if you really go back and watch the Tennessee game, which was, a game that, everybody just thought it was the end of the world. He maintains that Jaden Daniels, if you look at what he did, it wasn't, he didn't have a bad game. But they were, got behind multiple scores, and you can't do that against Tennessee. And of course, now we're going to see the rest of the way how bad or good that, how bad that Tennessee loss actually is. If they take care of Georgia and run the gamut, and I said it on our postgame show Saturday night, is Tennessee on the verge of having a unbelievably magical year that is similar to the one LSU had in 2019, where they, get to this time of year and they just start believing and it starts snowballing. But, they've got some tough games coming up. And if they get that far to the SEC championship game, there's a good chance they're going to play Alabama again. And we know what happens when Alabama gets to play somebody a second time. And but again, the reverse happened to them last year when Georgia gave them a taste of their old medicine.
Mike, how much of this with Jaden Daniels is the fact that, look, sometimes for transfer quarterbacks, it's not just about being there in the spring and the early part of the fall, but it was in a quarterback competition, and it's just him feeling comfortable being where he is now and not worrying about losing his job every snap.
Yeah, and I think there might have been a little bit of him overcompensating to not make mistakes and not throw interceptions and holding on to the ball too long. So you have maybe a little bit of that, a little bit of not having a comfort zone with his receivers. And then maybe it's just all slowing down for him. But now that he's throwing the ball the way that he is, and you combine that with his demoralizing to a defense running, there's nothing more demoralizing if you get LSU in 3rd and 8 and he goes back and then just trots to the marker and gets the first down. He's done that at least 25 or 30 times this season. It's a regular thing with him.
Yeah, he's terrific. 9 touchdowns on the ground now for him at this point, over 500 yards, and then, putting up a lot through the air as well. What have you thought about the offensive supporting cast and how they've grown around him, Mike?
Well, and that's the other part of it, too. It's like you've had a makeshift offensive line. I think they've had 6 or 7 different combinations each week, or maybe we finally had 2 weeks in a row of the same lineup. When do you ever see, particularly at that level of college football, where your starting tackles are both freshmen, true freshmen? And Will Campbell was SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. After the week before, he was in the hospital after suffering seizures. And I think Emory Jones is playing right tackle, which I think his natural position is guard. You're going to find that in December when they do the all-SEC freshman team, LSU is probably going to have 4 guys first team. The 2 offensive linemen, Campbell and Emory Jones, Harold Perkins, who I think might be the best player on the whole team. You guys know all about him from Texas. And Mason Taylor, Jason Taylor's son at tight end.
Mike, we know that there was some fodder, Brian Kelly, whether the accent or dancing with a potential, I don't know if it was a recruit or whoever, but you know, a lot of that was also just the anti-Brian Kelly from Notre Dame, and because Notre Dame is a national brand. I know LSU is as well. Is he now pretty much, you know, he can run the town for a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I think you and I have talked about it before. That whole accent thing, we were all there when it happened. Nobody, that didn't register with any of us. I mean, we've been amazed lately about how stuff we're sitting in a press conference, the local media, how we come out of there and do our follow our reports, and we look up on Twitter, and something that we thought was nothing is gone viral nationally.
Oh, welcome to the crowd.
Welcome to Twitter. Yeah.
I mean, the throwaway stuff with Mulkey 3 weeks ago with Griner. I mean, I couldn't believe it, how big that blew up. Now, you could say I wasn't paying attention and realize that was something that was going to blow up, but it did. But Kelly's the whole outsider, northerner, Yankee, Massachusetts born and bred, all that stuff, that just – the greatest coaches in LSU history are from parts of the country that are anything but Southern. Dale Brown from Minot, South Dakota. Nick Saban. I don't call West Virginia the South. That's the North. Came from Michigan State. Skip Burtman, a Jewish guy from Miami. I mean, the list goes on and on. Louisiana's a big melting pot. That's not an issue. Besides, you win football games, they're going to love you easily.
Well, I think people sometimes they use that stuff to forget that Brian Kelly is the all-time winningest coach at the most storied, program ever in Notre Dame. I mean, not to knock Alabama, but Notre Dame has the 120-year history. He's won more than anybody else there. People forget about that because he's kind of a dork sometimes. What
I don't get is everybody hates Notre Dame, right? If you're not a Notre Dame fan, you either hate them or Alabama or Texas. And in my case, you hate all three. So, so which is it? Because they say there's a Brian Kelly backlash, like how dare he leave Notre Dame for a school like LSU? Well, if you're a typical person that's not a Notre Dame fan and can't stand the fact that they've had their own TV contract on NBC, think they've gotten in a nicer bowls and playoffs when their team didn't deserve and played weak schedules most of the time. But now you want to flip the script and if anything, you should be giddy that a guy broke it off in their backside and headed down south.
Mike, you mentioned Harold Perkins. A lot of people are mentioning Harold Perkins right now. What are we talking about with him in terms of just how good he is and how good he can continue to be and get over the coming years?
I don't know how you can keep him off the field. We're all scratching our head. Last week Kelly was saying, well, when we do this, if we're going to keep him on the field, that means the Ojulari's not in the game. Well, look, I mean, B.J. Ojulari is going to be a high-round draft pick, but Harold Perkins is more devastating than him. And what does that say? Because Ojulari is a fantastic football player.
Yeah.
But for a true freshman who everybody that I saw that covers recruiting, saw him probably at least once a month throughout his high school career in that area, that guys I know said that he was raw, was going to need a redshirt year. He might be a better running back than a linebacker. Now he's wearing number 40 like Devin White. And, man, the sky's the limit for him. And with LSU having problems with kickoffs, I'm like, man, I ran into the running backs coach, Frank Wilson, at a high school Friday night. I was out videoing some recruits. And I'm like, man, kickoffs. Well, I think he returned kickoffs. And I said, man, I said, he's actually the best running back on the team too. So if this kid stays healthy, he's absolutely amazing, devastating for a true freshman to come into a system like that. Because I know Matt House is hitting him with a lot of terminology, this and that. And usually a kid like that might swim, their head will swim and overthink things. If he's overthinking things, he's got enough held back that you don't even notice it.
Mike, they were blown out by Tennessee. We now obviously have even more confirmation about what the Vols are like with their win against Alabama in that crazy game up in Knoxville. Is this surprising to you, what you've seen?
Out of Tennessee?
No, out of LSU. I'm sorry, out of LSU.
Yeah, well, after that game, I was just kind of like, with the whole rest of the way, with what's on the schedule, I'm just not going to pick LSU to win, But then they go beat Florida in Gainesville, and then they beat Ole Miss. I don't know what to make of it. Now you see what Arkansas is doing. It's always tough to win in Fayetteville. We see what's happening with Texas A&M. Open date this week. Then Alabama in night, Tiger Stadium. It's going to be. I've gotten hit for ticket requests. That's going to be another one that's going to be third-party ticket prices is going to be through the roof for that one. And you got UAB sandwiched in there in November. So I think he's ahead of schedule. I said 8-4. I think a lot of people might have been saying 8-4, but maybe really felt 7-5. Well, what happens if he does something crazy and upsets Alabama? All of a sudden, people around here are going to be talking 9-3. And believe me, with what he inherited, with 43 scholarship players, and then got a bunch of transfers from Sunbelt schools and a couple from Arkansas and some Sunbelt linemen and losing Mason Smith, your best defensive lineman, and a freak injury in opening defensive series of the Florida State game for the season. If it wasn't for what Heupel's doing at Tennessee, and if it holds up and he continues on that trajectory, you'd have to say Brian Kelly would be SEC Coach of the Year.
He's certainly not in the Jimbo category, that's for sure.
What's wrong with Jimbo? Jimbo's coaching up a storm. The players just don't understand it.
Yeah.
Well, Jimbo's running the same offense he did at LSU 20 years ago. Mm. And so, I don't know who the AD, I don't know much about the AD and how much he's going to put his foot down, or if Jimbo absolutely knows he's got to do it. But it was always the issue when he was at LSU that it took up to 3 years for his quarterbacks to be anything that you thought they were going to be out of high school. And one thing I've said is, you want to talk about the closest thing to a Les Miles offense that drove everybody crazy here is what Jimbo does at A&M. So he's got to fix that. But they've got to be real worried about some of the high-profile kids that they have got in the program that are going to see the wheels coming off this thing and are going to get poached and putting feelers out there and start hitting the portal.
Mike, good stuff. Everything good with you? I know you had a doctor's appointment. Everything good?
All good. Just blood work.
All right, good. All right, man. Take care of yourself. We appreciate your knowledge and also insight. LSU